The day the sky changed color, people thought it was just another strange weather event. The sun looked dim, the air trembled slightly, and birds moved in odd patterns. But within minutes, news channels across the world began showing the same thing: a shadow above the clouds, stretching wider than any storm ever seen. It wasn't a storm. It was something else, something huge. At first, people didn't believe it. The idea that something could hover above Earth without falling didn't make sense. But then the clouds parted and the world saw them. Ships, hundreds of them floating in formation like dark islands in the sky. They were massive, silent, and shaped like moving mountains made of light and metal. For a moment, the whole planet went quiet. Governments sent fighter jets to investigate, but the ships didn't react. They just stayed there watching. The silence felt worse than an attack. No one knew what the visitors wanted. Some people prayed, others screamed, and some strangely laughed, because the situation felt too unreal to fear. A message came soon after. Every screen on Earth flickered to life, showing a tall, silver-armored figure. Its face was hidden behind a mask that glowed with blue lines, and its voice echoed like thunder in a canyon. "People of Earth," it said, "you now belong to the Empire. Submit and your world will be spared." For a few seconds, no one moved. Then the world erupted, not in surrender but in disbelief. Submit to strangers who had just appeared in the sky? No one wanted war, but no one wanted to kneel either. That night, in homes, offices, and underground shelters, people began to talk. Scientists, leaders, soldiers, and even ordinary citizens connected through screens, trying to understand who these beings were and what they wanted. The figure on the broadcast was later identified by the Empire's own transmission as the Titan, their strongest warrior, a symbol of their dominance. They sent him alone to Earth as proof that even one of their kind could conquer an entire world. It sounded impossible, but then again, nothing made sense anymore. When the Titan landed, the ground shook for miles. It wasn't a spaceship that touched down. It was him walking through the atmosphere like gravity didn't apply. His armor glowed like molten silver, and every step sent shockwaves that cracked roads and shattered windows. People who saw him from afar said it felt like watching a living weapon. The first confrontation happened in an empty desert. The world watched through satellite feeds. The military had set up defense lines, tanks, jets, missiles, everything they could gather. The Titan walked toward them slowly, almost casually. When the first missiles hit him, they exploded in fire and smoke. But when the dust cleared, he was still standing. Not a single mark on his armor. He raised one arm and a burst of light shot out, disabling dozens of machines at once. Tanks melted and drones fell from the sky. In minutes, the defense line was gone. Soldiers ran for cover, not out of cowardice, but because nothing they had worked. It wasn't even a battle. It was like watching nature itself crush anything that stood in its way. The Empire's ships hovered above, silent witnesses. It was their message to the world. Resistance was useless. But on Earth, people didn't accept that message. Instead, something strange happened. Instead of breaking down, humanity became more united than ever. For the first time in history, borders didn't matter. Countries that had never trusted each other before began sharing information. Scientists from every corner of the world worked together through encrypted channels. Engineers stayed awake for days in underground labs, building and testing new technology. Soldiers from different nations trained side by side, learning from each other instead of competing. Every person wanted to help in their own way. Hackers tried to decode alien signals. Mechanics took apart old machines to build new ones. Farmers offered fuel and supplies. Even school students spent nights sending coded messages across networks, helping with data the professionals couldn't process in time. Humanity had never been this connected. But while the world worked, the Titan continued walking. City after city, he demanded surrender. Some leaders tried negotiating through broadcasts, but he never answered. His mission was simple: make the world kneel. Yet every time he destroyed something, humans rebuilt it. When he tore down communication towers, people used satellites. When he crushed armored vehicles, engineers replaced them with drones. No matter how many times he attacked, Earth responded differently. It was almost like the planet itself was learning, adapting. The laughter that followed the Empire's first message wasn't arrogance anymore. It was defiance, the kind of laugh that comes from people who have nothing left to lose but everything to protect. Weeks passed, and the tension grew heavier. Everyone knew a full invasion could happen any day, but the Empire didn't send anyone else. They believed one warrior was enough. They thought humans were too weak to be worth more effort. What they didn't realize was that humans didn't need to match their power. They only needed to find the smallest crack in it. One night, deep inside a hidden research base beneath the mountains, a group of scientists finally found something. They had been studying the energy signature around the Titan's armor. It wasn't indestructible. It was based on a frequency, a field of light that absorbed physical force but reacted strangely to certain sound waves. That discovery changed everything. Within hours, military engineers began building devices that could generate high-frequency pulses. They called it Project Echo. It was dangerous and unstable, but it was their best chance. When dawn came and the Titan appeared again, humanity was ready. The new plan wasn't about destruction, it was about disruption. As the Titan reached the outskirts of another city, drones filled the sky. But instead of attacking, they hovered silently, forming a ring around him. For the first time, he hesitated. He could sense something, an invisible pressure in the air. Then, without warning, the drones activated. The entire area pulsed with a strange vibration, and the sound that followed wasn't something anyone could describe. It wasn't loud, but it felt like it shook the bones. The Titan stumbled for the first time. His armor flickered. The world saw it. The impossible had happened. He was affected. Humanity had finally made him bleed light. But before anyone could celebrate, he unleashed another burst of energy, destroying every drone in seconds. The city shook and buildings fell, but the message had already spread. The Titan wasn't invincible. The Empire's strongest could be hurt. That tiny victory changed everything. People didn't just hope anymore, they believed. The sound of cheering spread through shelters, control rooms, and dark basements around the world. Humanity had just proven that even the most powerful enemy could fall. The Empire didn't respond right away. Their ships remained silent in orbit, watching. Maybe they were surprised. Maybe they were waiting. But down on Earth, humans were already working on the next step. It wasn't about revenge or destruction. It was about survival, about proving that no matter who came from the stars, this planet wouldn't bow. That night, under a torn sky filled with both fear and courage, the people of Earth prepared for what they knew was coming next. They didn't know if they would win or lose, but they knew one thing for sure: they would never surrender. And somewhere, standing on the remains of a broken highway, the Titan looked down at the small, fragile world beneath his feet. For the first time since he arrived, he didn't move. He watched the lights in the distance. The city's still glowing, the signals still active, the people still fighting. He didn't say a word. But maybe deep inside he understood something about this strange, stubborn species that refused to give up. Because while empires were built on power, humans were built on something the Empire could never understand: the will to rise again. No matter how many times they fell, the war hadn't truly begun yet. But that night the battlefield was no longer just the sky and the ground. It was also the human heart. And that was a war no empire had ever won. After that night, everything changed. People no longer whispered in fear. They talked with purpose. The small victory against the Titan gave humanity something it had been missing: belief. Not the kind that comes from speeches or promises, but the kind that grows when people see something impossible actually happen. Across the world, factories that once made cars now built drones and defense shields. Scientists who had never met before worked side by side, sharing discoveries that were once secrets of nations. Every corner of the planet turned into a workshop, a base, or a command post. Even the smallest towns had people volunteering, collecting data, building supplies, helping refugees. The Empire's ships still hung in the sky like silent mountains. They hadn't attacked again. It was strange, almost peaceful, but everyone knew that peace wasn't real. It felt like the calm before a storm. The Titan didn't vanish after the last battle. He was seen again, walking across deserts, mountains, and oceans as if he was studying the planet. Satellites followed him, tracking every move, but he didn't seem to care. Some believed he was waiting for Earth to give up. Others thought he was planning something bigger. But humans weren't waiting. They were preparing. Under the mountains, deep inside a secret facility, a group of scientists worked day and night. They called it the Forge. The air inside buzzed with electricity, the sound of machines, and the steady hum of hope. Their goal wasn't to create a weapon of destruction, but something that could match the Titan's energy, something that could stand toe-to-toe with him, even if only for a short while. Outside, the world watched. Every nation contributed what they could: materials, energy, and, most importantly, people. Pilots, engineers, and technicians all volunteered. No one talked about who was in charge anymore. It didn't matter. Humanity was finally one team. But the Titan wasn't idle. A week later, he appeared again, this time near a major city by the coast. The moment he was spotted, alarms went off across continents. Fighter jets scrambled into the air. The sky filled with streaks of light and smoke. People evacuated the city, rushing to underground shelters. When he arrived, he stood at the edge of the ocean, looking at the water as if he could see through it. The waves bent around his feet, reacting to some invisible force. Then he raised his arm and a beam of light shot from his hand, cutting across the horizon. It wasn't aimed at anyone. It was a demonstration, a reminder of what he could do. The sea boiled. Ships miles away were tossed like toys. The message was clear. The Empire's strongest was not to be ignored, but something different happened this time. The human response came faster. The Forge had finished its first test prototype, a manned exosuit powered by something they called Zero Core, a reactor made from both human technology and what they had learned from studying alien energy fields. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't even stable, but it was ready enough. The pilot climbed into the suit, not knowing if it would work or if it would even come back in one piece. He didn't think of himself as a hero. He was just one person who couldn't watch his world be destroyed. When the exosuit launched, the ground shook. The engine screamed and the machine cut through the sky like lightning. The world watched through broadcast screens as the glowing figure flew toward the Titan. For the first time, Earth had something that could fight back. The Titan turned as it approached. He didn't attack right away. It was as if he was curious. When the two met above the ocean, the sky turned white. Energy burst between them like thunder. The battle was short but fierce. The Titan had centuries of power behind him, but the human pilot had something different: unpredictability. Every move was creative, desperate, and raw. He used the clouds for cover, the water to reflect energy, and every second to learn. People around the world held their breath. They weren't just watching a fight. They were watching humanity prove it could adapt. The Titan eventually overpowered the exosuit, sending it crashing into the sea. But before the signal was lost, a final pulse of energy hit the Titan's chest. For the second time, his armor cracked. The screen went dark, but the world didn't fall silent this time. They cheered. They cried. They realized that even if humanity couldn't win every battle, it could survive them. After the fight, the Empire's ships began to move for the first time in weeks. They shifted position, forming a new pattern in the sky, something like a net surrounding Earth. Some scientists believed it was a blockade. Others thought it was preparation for an invasion. But down below, the Forge team didn't stop. They recovered what was left of the exosuit, analyzing every fragment. The pilot was rescued, barely alive but smiling. When asked how it felt to face the Titan, he said, "He's powerful, but he's not invincible." He hesitated. He looked almost human. That single sentence spread like fire across the world. If the Titan could hesitate, he could doubt. And if he could doubt, he could lose. In the following days, new plans were made. Teams of scientists focused on creating smaller, faster suits instead of one massive one. Engineers built drones that could carry high-frequency disruptors. And ordinary people, farmers, artists, students, continued to help however they could. The fight wasn't just about machines anymore. It was about spirit. The Titan appeared less often after that battle, but his presence was always felt. Sometimes satellites would catch glimpses of him standing alone in fields or near mountains, as if he was watching humanity from afar. It was strange. He didn't destroy anything during those moments. He just stood there silent, as if trying to understand something. Maybe he was beginning to see that humans weren't like the other civilizations the Empire had conquered. They weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for meaning for each other. But the Empire wasn't done testing them. A few days later, a massive beam from space struck one of Earth's communication stations. It vaporized in seconds. No warning, no message, just destruction. It was a clear reminder. The Empire still controlled the skies, The world mourned the loss, but instead of falling into panic, they responded with action. Within hours, hundreds of new communication lines were built using old technology. It wasn't as fast, but it worked. Humanity refused to go silent. The Empire watched, perhaps puzzled. Every time they tried to break the humans, they only became stronger. Then came the day no one expected. The Titan returned by moment not to destroy. He appeared in front of one of the global observation stations, unarmed. Cameras zoomed in, capturing his every move. For minutes he stood still, then raised his hand slowly and drew a single symbol into the ground. A circle with 3 lines inside it. No one knew what it meant. The image spread everywhere, sparking theories and debates. Some believed it was a threat. Others thought it was a warning. But a few believed it was a message, maybe even a test. The Empire had sent their strongest, expecting to crush humanity in a single blow. But instead they had found a planet that refused to kneel, a species that turned fear into fire. And somewhere deep inside that silver armor, the Titan might have begun to realize that this wasn't just another conquest. This was something else entirely. As night fell, people looked up at the ships in the sky. They were still there, huge, silent, and terrifying, but they no longer felt like gods watching from above. They felt like invaders being studied by the very world they had tried to control. The world had changed forever. Humanity was no longer just defending itself. It was adapting, evolving, becoming something new. The laughter that once came from disbelief now carried a different meaning. It wasn't fear disguised as humor, and it was confidence. It was the laughter of people who knew that even in the face of impossible odds, they still had a chance. And so, as the world prepared for the next phase of this silent war, one thing became clear, and the Empire had made a mistake. They thought humans were weak because they were divided, emotional, unpredictable. But those very things were what made them dangerous. They could break, but they would rebuild. They could fall, but they would rise again. And as the ships glowed faintly above the clouds, and the stars shimmered beyond them, one thought echoed quietly across the hearts of billions. If this was what humanity could do under pressure, then the Empire hadn't seen anything yet. Days turned into weeks, and the strange symbol the Titan had drawn on the ground became the center of every discussion on Earth. Scientists tried decoding it, language experts analyzed it, and spiritual leaders even called it a sign from the heavens. But no one really understood what it meant. Some believed it was a warning that more power was coming. Others thought it was a challenge. The world's satellites watched the Titan's every move. He didn't attack again, not even once. He walked across mountains, oceans, and ruined battlefields almost like he was exploring. Sometimes he stopped and stared at the horizon, as if thinking about something far away. It was strange. This was the same being who had destroyed armies without hesitation. But now he seemed different. People started wondering, could he feel something? Could he doubt his mission? While the Empire's warrior moved in silence, humans didn't stop preparing. The world had learned one thing: hesitation from their enemy meant opportunity for them. Underground bases multiplied, new research centers formed, and thousands of minds kept working without rest. In one hidden valley, surrounded by snowy peaks, a small group of engineers and scientists had been working on a secret project. They called it Project Dawn. Their goal wasn't just to build stronger machines. It was to create something alive, something that could learn like a human but react like a machine. A living defense system that could evolve in real time during battle. They had taken what they learned from the Titan's armor and combined it with human creativity. The result was a strange, glowing structure, not quite metal, not quite energy, something between the two. It wasn't a weapon yet, but it was the first step toward something extraordinary. At the same time, a group of communication experts discovered something hidden in the Empire's transmissions. Their ships were sending encrypted signals back and forth, but recently those signals had changed pattern. It looked like they were arguing, different frequencies clashing, like voices that didn't agree. It meant that maybe, just maybe, even within the Empire, there was conflict. When the Global Council heard about this, they knew it was their chance. If the Empire's unity was shaking, humanity could use it to their advantage. Plans began forming, not just to fight but to confuse the enemy. Instead of firing missiles or bombs, humans launched thousands of small satellites that emitted false signals. They created holographic illusions in the upper atmosphere, fake cities, and decoy power sources. The goal was to make the Empire think Earth was preparing something massive, something terrifying. And it worked. For the first time since the invasion began, the Empire's ships moved back. Not much, but enough to show hesitation. That single movement gave Earth another burst of hope. It meant fear could go both ways. While this silent war of signals and illusions continued, the Titan suddenly appeared again, this time near the Ya. Ruins of an old city that had once been the heart of human civilization. The ground cracked as he landed, and for a long moment he stood completely still. Then he did something no one expected. He removed his helmet. No one could see his full face clearly through the broadcast, but the outline was almost human. Eyes that glowed faintly, not with rage but with something deeper, confusion, maybe even sadness. He looked around at the empty streets, the broken buildings, the reminders of lives once lived. It was as if he was trying to understand why humans kept fighting for such a fragile world. The moment was brief, but it left a powerful impression. The Titan wasn't a mindless weapon. He was beginning to see humanity, not just as enemies but as something more complex. After that, reports started coming in from around the world. The Titan was helping, not attacking. In some destroyed villages, people found strange energy crystals that healed damaged ground. In a few places, surveillance drones recorded the Titan moving rubble, almost as if he was clearing space for something. The Empire didn't announce these actions, and their ships didn't react. It was as if the Titan was acting on his own, against orders. The Global Council debated endlessly. Some said it was a trick, a way to lower humanity's guard. Others believed the Titan was rebelling. But no one could deny one thing: something had changed. Meanwhile, the Project Dawn team made a breakthrough. They managed to stabilize the living metal's core, giving it its first pulse of independent energy. When it lit up, the light spread through the entire underground chamber like a sunrise. The engineers stared in awe. It wasn't just a machine anymore, it was alive. They decided to name it Echo. It didn't have a voice or a body yet, but it had thought. It could learn, react, and even adapt its energy field based on what it sensed. The plan was to connect it with the global defense system, so that every human weapon, drone, and shield could move as one, like an extension of a single mind. It was humanity's answer to the Titan, not another giant, but something smarter, faster, and built from their own will to survive. But before they could activate it fully, something unexpected happened. The Empire finally spoke again. After months of silence, their message appeared on every screen on Earth. The same cold voice from the beginning returned, saying, "Your resistance is remarkable, but defiance has consequences. Your world will know the true meaning of power." The words were followed by a light, brighter than any explosion before. It wasn't aimed at any city, but straight into the sky. For a few seconds, it looked beautiful, like a new star being born. But then scientists realized what it was, and a signal. The Empire wasn't attacking yet. They were calling reinforcements. The news spread across the globe. Panic tried to return, but humanity was different now. People didn't scream or give up. They prepared. Project Dawn was accelerated. Every factory worked without rest. Soldiers were trained to use new exosuits, and civilians helped build energy walls around cities. Everyone had a role. Everyone mattered. When the new Empire fleet finally arrived, the sky changed color again. This time it wasn't hundreds, and it was thousands of ships. They filled the clouds like a storm of steel and fire. The world shook with their arrival. But the humans didn't hide. The global defense network went live, and Echo, the living machine, activated for the first time. Its energy connected to every drone, satellite, and ship in orbit. The world pulsed as one. The first wave of the battle began above the atmosphere. The Empire's ships fired beams that cut through the sky. but Echo redirected Earth's satellites to form a moving shield, bending energy away. For the first time, the planet wasn't just defending itself, it was fighting smart. The Titan stood on a mountain peak watching the chaos. He didn't move to help his own kind. He just watched, silent and motionless, as if caught between two worlds. Then slowly he turned his gaze downward, toward the humans, toward the machines they had built, toward the courage they refused to lose. He looked like someone facing a decision heavier than any battle. As the war raged above, humanity's new systems began counterattacking. Swarms of drones formed patterns, striking weak points in the Empire's formation. Small ships carrying high-frequency pulses crashed into enemy shields, creating holes in their defenses. The sky became a dance of fire and light. From space, the Earth glowed like a beating heart surrounded by darkness, alive, defiant, unstoppable. And at that very moment, something unbelievable happened. One of the Empire's largest ships, one that had been controlling hundreds of smaller ones, exploded from within. It wasn't a human weapon that caused it. It was internal. A betrayal. The signal traced back to the Titan. He had turned against his own fleet. The being once sent to destroy Earth had now become its protector. No one knew why. Maybe he had seen enough of human strength to question his own purpose. Maybe he had realized that true power wasn't about domination, but about choice. Whatever the reason, his betrayal shook the Empire. Their formation broke, their confidence shattered. For the first time, they looked weak. Humanity didn't waste the moment. Guided by Echo's intelligence, the combined forces struck back. The Empire's ships began to fall one after another, streaks of light vanishing into the darkness. But even as victory seemed near, the humans knew the fight wasn't over. The Empire would return. They always did. Still, the world looked up with hope. The Titan, once their greatest enemy, had joined their side. And Echo, the creation born from human unity, had proven that no matter how advanced an empire might be, it could never crush the spirit of those who refused to surrender. That night, the stars shone brighter than before. The battle wasn't finished, but for the first time, humanity felt something it hadn't felt since the invasion began. Pride. Not because they were the strongest, but because they had finally learned the truth. Even the smallest spark, when united with others, could light up the darkest sky. And somewhere beyond that sky, deep within the broken fleet of the Empire, new eyes were watching, curious, uncertain, maybe even afraid. The story of Earth was far from over, but the Empire now knew something they hadn't expected to learn. Humans could laugh in the face of fear, and when they did, they didn't just survive, they changed the universe around them. The days after the first major battle were strange. Cities that had survived the initial strikes were filled with both fear and energy. People walked through streets that were half destroyed, repairing, rebuilding, and helping one another. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about showing the world that humanity could endure anything. The sky above Earth remained filled with the Empire's ships, but their numbers were thinner than before. The Titan's actions had caused chaos in their fleet, breaking their coordination. For the first time, humans could observe weaknesses, patterns, and even a kind of fear. The Empire had never expected a small, chaotic species to fight back intelligently, and now they were paying for underestimating it. Project Dawn and Echo became the heart of humanity's defense. Every day, more machines were connected, more drones deployed, and more energy shields activated. Each city, no matter how small, became a node in a planet-wide network. Ordinary people were essential to the effort. Scientists, engineers, farmers, and even students contributed in ways that mattered. Someone repaired a generator, another calculated drone trajectories, and someone else helped feed the people who worked day and night. The Titan appeared again. This time he didn't arrive with the destructive force of before. He landed quietly in a valley far from human cities. Children who had wandered too close stopped in their tracks, watching him silently. For a moment, the air itself seemed to hold its breath. He raised one hand and energy radiated from his armor. But instead of destroying, the energy repaired a broken bridge and stabilized a landslide. It wasn't an attack. It was a strange kind of care. People began whispering maybe he wasn't just an invader. Maybe he had started to understand humans. their determination, their creativity, their stubborn refusal to surrender. Meanwhile, humanity had learned to fight smarter. Small groups of pilots used stealth drones to intercept supply ships from the Empire. Engineers designed decoys that tricked alien sensors. Scientists found ways to send subtle pulses that confused the Empire's AI systems. Every step was a small victory, and the humans knew it. The Titan's presence became a symbol of hope. Even though he had once been the world's most dangerous enemy, now he represented the possibility of change. He didn't speak, and perhaps he never would, but his actions communicated something humans could understand. Strength wasn't just about destruction, it was about choice. One night, in a massive underground command center, the Global Council gathered. Maps of the sky were projected across the walls. Every movement of the Empire's fleet, every pulse of energy from their ships was being analyzed. Generals, scientists, and leaders spoke quietly, not about fear, but about strategy. One of the engineers reported that Echo had begun adapting itself in ways no one had expected. It was learning from the Titan's movements and the Empire's attacks, predicting their patterns before they happened. It wasn't just a machine anymore. It was a partner in the fight, a reflection of humanity's collective will. The world had never been so united. Borders no longer mattered. Every decision was made for the survival of the species, not for nations or politics. People shared resources, knowledge, and hope. Even in areas far from the front lines, ordinary citizens felt part of the effort. The next attack came without warning. Thousands of ships descended from the upper atmosphere. The humans had no time to prepare fully. Alarms screamed, lights flickered, and families huddled in shelters. But the planet-wide defense system activated immediately. Drones formed walls of light. Energy shields flickered into place, and satellites created a network of illusions to confuse the incoming fleet. The battle was unlike anything humans had faced before. Beams of energy cut through the clouds, explosions shook the ground, and yet humanity adapted. Cities that had been rebuilt only days before became launch points for counterattacks. Engineers recalibrated shields mid-battle. Pilots improvised maneuvers no algorithm could predict. Every citizen contributed, whether they were building, repairing, or guiding troops. The Titan arrived as well. Instead of leading the Empire's attack, he moved between their ships, disabling energy cores and breaking formations. It was clear that he was acting independently. The humans who first feared him now watched with awe. As the battle raged for hours, the Empire struggled to regain control. Ships collided in the sky, beams misfired, and their formation collapsed. The humans had turned the battlefield into a puzzle the Empire could not solve. Every attack was met with a response, every movement anticipated. It wasn't brute force against brute force. It was intelligence, creativity, and teamwork. By the end of the day, the skies cleared. Many of the Empire's ships were destroyed or disabled. The Titan stood on a ruined plateau, looking down at the humans below. For the first time, he didn't strike. He watched as people emerged from shelters, tending to the wounded and rebuilding what had been destroyed. The humans were exhausted, but they were alive. They had survived what seemed impossible, and in their survival they had learned something new. The strength of one person is limited, but the strength of millions, united by a single purpose, is unstoppable. The Empire was shaken. Their most powerful warrior had turned against them, and their fleet had been broken. They sent new signals trying to regroup, but their confidence was gone. They had underestimated the humans' resilience and ingenuity. Meanwhile, humanity celebrated quietly. It wasn't a victory party, like there was still work to do, but people felt hope for the first time since the invasion began. Children laughed, families embraced, and communities worked together to repair the damage. Every person knew that they had contributed in some way to this survival, and that knowledge gave them strength. The Titan disappeared again after the battle. Some thought he had returned to his fleet. Others believed he was studying humans, learning from them. Whatever the reason, his actions had changed the course of the war. In the weeks that followed, Earth continued to rebuild and prepare. Every city had a plan. Every group of people, no matter how small, contributed to the defense. Humans had become more than a species trying to survive. They had become a force the Empire could not ignore. Project Dawn and Echo continued to evolve. The living machine learned faster than anyone expected. It could predict enemy movements, coordinate defenses, and even guide human troops in real time. It wasn't a replacement for humans. It was an extension of them, a reflection of their determination and creativity. The Empire sent more messages, demanding surrender. They threatened, they warned, they tried to intimidate. But humans didn't flinch. They had learned that fear could be turned into action. They had learned that unity and intelligence were more powerful than raw strength. And somewhere far above the clouds, the Titan watched silently. The being once sent to conquer Earth had become its unexpected guardian. He didn't speak, he didn't intervene openly, but his presence was a reminder that even the strongest could change when faced with courage, ingenuity, and heart. The world had learned something important. Battles are not won by power alone. They are won by those who refuse to give up, who learn from every challenge, and who fight not for domination but for life, hope, and each other. And as the sun rose over cities still scarred by battle, people looked up at the sky and saw something different. They didn't just see ships and enemies. They saw possibility. They saw the courage of billions working as one. They saw proof that no matter how dark the skies became, humanity could endure, adapt, and rise again. The war was far from over. The Empire still had forces in orbit. The Titan's role remained uncertain. But for the first time, humans believed in themselves in a way they never had before. They were no longer just survivors. They were fighters, thinkers, builders, and dreamers. And in that belief, in that unity, they found a strength the Empire had never anticipated. The sky over Earth was no longer calm. The Empire's remaining ships had gathered in a massive formation, trying to regain control. The humans knew this might be the final push, the moment when everything they had built, everything they had learned would be tested to its limit. Even in the face of such overwhelming power, people didn't panic. They had learned from every previous attack. Children hid in shelters, but adults worked tirelessly above and below ground. Engineers recalibrated drones, pilots practiced maneuvers, and soldiers prepared their new exosuits. Even ordinary citizens, far from the front lines, did their part, repairing communication arrays, supplying power, or keeping watch over their neighborhoods. Echo, the living machine, had grown stronger. It could process data from satellites, drones, and human soldiers simultaneously. It anticipated enemy movements before they happened and suggested strategies that no human mind could have devised alone. It wasn't replacing humans. It was enhancing them, becoming a reflection of humanity's creativity and determination. The Titan appeared again. Unlike before, he didn't descend with the energy of destruction. He landed on a cliff overlooking the ocean, standing silently, watching the humans below. They had seen him destroy without thought, but now they saw him hesitate. Every movement he made showed purpose, and every pause seemed deliberate. No one fully understood what was happening. The Titan had once been the Empire's weapon, their strongest warrior, yet now he moved almost like a guardian. His presence alone changed the way humans fought. They were no longer defending a planet against an unstoppable force. They were working alongside it. The Empire struck first. Beams of energy raked across the oceans and forests, striking fear into anyone who saw them. Their ships moved in patterns designed to crush, to overwhelm, to erase. But the humans were ready. Echo had coordinated defenses across continents. Drones intercepted beams, satellites redirected energy, and shields activated instantly. For the first time, Earth didn't just survive the Empire's attack, and it resisted actively. The first wave of ships began to fall. Not all at once, but steadily. Small groups of drones and human-piloted exosuits disrupted engines, cut communications, and created confusion among the Empire's ranks. Every success, no matter how small, was amplified by Echo's coordination. Then the Titan moved. He didn't attack blindly. He targeted the largest, most powerful ships, the ones controlling the smaller fleets. His strikes were precise, surgical, and devastating. Entire squadrons of enemy fighters were cut off in seconds. The humans watched in awe. The being that had once terrified them was now their greatest ally. On the ground, soldiers and engineers coordinated strikes using everything at their disposal. Old tanks, repurposed for precision attacks, fired alongside drones. Pilots guided missiles through newly cleared paths, striking at weak points revealed by Echo. Humanity had become a living, breathing force, unpredictable, adaptive, and unstoppable. As the battle continued, A shocking realization spread through the Empire's remaining forces. They were losing control. Their ships, once coordinated and precise, moved erratically. Some malfunctioned, some collided, and some turned against each other. It was as if the Titans' actions and the humans' ingenuity had created chaos they could not recover from. From the sky, humans could see the shift. The once massive fleet began breaking apart. Lights flickered as ships exploded and streaks of debris rained down like shooting stars. Humanity had turned fear into opportunity. They had learned that raw power could be outmatched by strategy, unity, and courage. On a plateau, the Titan watched the destruction, standing tall and unyielding. He had changed the course of history. For the first time, the Empire faced not just resistance, but defiance that could not be crushed. His strikes were precise, his presence commanding, yet he never attacked civilians or destroyed what could be repaired. People below cheered quietly. They didn't celebrate recklessly. There was still danger. But hope had returned in a way that was tangible, alive, and unstoppable. Humanity had proven that even against an enemy far stronger they could survive, and now they could fight back. The battle raged for days. Waves of enemy ships continued to arrive, but each time they were met with a coordinated response. Humans had learned to anticipate patterns, to use the environment, to work together. Cities became hubs of intelligence and strategy. Underground bunkers transmitted real-time information to pilots, engineers, and soldiers. Every action, every movement was part of a greater plan, and slowly the Empire began to retreat. Their ships, once confident and overwhelming, faltered. Communication lines failed. Internal disputes among their commanders erupted. The humans had created confusion and fear within the invaders' ranks. For the first time, the Empire experienced uncertainty, a concept they had never understood. The Titan, standing on a cliff, looked down at the world below. Humans moved with purpose, rebuilding, attacking, defending, and coordinating. He had seen countless civilizations fall under the Empire's might, but these humans were different. They didn't rely on the strongest fighter, the deadliest weapon, or the most advanced technology. They relied on each other, and that made them dangerous in ways the Empire could not comprehend. One of the Empire's largest ships attempted a desperate final strike. It moved directly toward Earth, firing a massive energy beam meant to destroy a major city. Echo immediately calculated the path and coordinated a counterattack. Drones moved to intercept, satellites created energy shields, and human pilots guided missiles with pinpoint accuracy. The beam struck one of the shields and shattered. The shockwave sent debris into the air, but the city survived. The humans had adapted again, and their victory wasn't just survival. It was proof that they could think faster, work together, and overcome challenges that seemed impossible. Then came the final moment. The Titan moved to the heart of the enemy fleet. His strikes were unstoppable, targeting command ships and energy cores. One by one, the Empire's most powerful vessels were destroyed. Ships that had seemed invincible now lay in ruin. The remaining enemy forces retreated into the upper atmosphere, leaving behind their dead and their shattered pride. The humans had won, not because they were stronger, not because they had more advanced technology than the Empire, but because they had refused to surrender, refused to give up, and refused to let fear control them. They had fought together, used their minds, and relied on ingenuity, courage, and unity. On Earth, people came out of shelters. They looked at the sky, still filled with smoke and debris, and felt something they had not felt in months: relief, hope, pride. They had survived what no one believed was possible. The Titan disappeared after the battle. No one knew where he went. Some believed he returned to the Empire, reporting their defeat. Others thought he stayed on Earth, watching over the humans he had come to respect. But his actions had left a mark, a reminder that strength alone does not define victory. Choice, courage, and unity can change everything. Humanity began the long work of rebuilding. Cities were repaired, communities came together, and technologies adapted from the Empire's fleet were repurposed for progress. People celebrated cautiously, knowing the Empire might return, but confident in their ability to survive and fight again. Children who had hidden during the battles now played in streets filled with sunlight. Scientists taught the next generation about cooperation, technology, and courage. Farmers, engineers, pilots, and soldiers all shared stories of survival, bravery, and teamwork. The lessons of the war became the foundation of a new era, The world had changed forever. Nations no longer acted alone. Borders became less important as humanity realized that survival depended on unity. Every person had contributed to the fight in some way, and that shared experience created a sense of connection never seen before. And somewhere in the distance, the Titan watched. His presence remained a silent reminder. Even the strongest force can be turned by those who refuse to give up, who fight for each other, and who act with courage and intelligence. The humans had laughed when the Empire demanded surrender. They had survived when the strongest warrior arrived. They had turned fear into strategy, despair into action, and weakness into strength. And in doing so, they had changed the course of history. The Empire would remember this planet not as a conquest, but as a lesson. The human spirit cannot be crushed. Power alone is meaningless without determination, unity, and heart. Humanity had won the battle. But more importantly, they had proven something much greater. They could stand together, survive the impossible, and rise stronger than ever before. The sky over Earth was calm for the first time in months. The fires of battle had cooled. The echoes of explosions had faded, and the clouds seemed to part in a quiet sky. People stepped outside cautiously, scanning the horizon, half expecting new ships to appear. But for now, the Empire was gone, their fleet scattered, their plans defeated. Humanity had survived. Even in the quiet, there was no relaxation. Cities were in ruins, forests scorched, and oceans littered with debris. The rebuilding had to begin immediately. People worked together, not just to repair what had been destroyed, but to create a world stronger than before. Engineers salvaged materials from destroyed enemy ships. Farmers planted food in damaged soil, making sure the next generation would have sustenance. Doctors, scientists, and volunteers moved from city to city, treating the wounded and sharing knowledge. Echo, the living machine, became a cornerstone of reconstruction. It guided engineers, predicted structural weaknesses, and coordinated massive repair projects. But it wasn't just a tool. Echo had learned from humans. It had grown in intelligence and understanding, responding with solutions that no single human could have imagined. It had become part of humanity's collective mind, a reflection of their unity, courage, and determination. Even the Titan was seen again. This time he didn't arrive as a warrior, nor as a destroyer. He was seen moving through cities, standing on hills, and walking across plains, watching the people rebuild. No one dared approach him, yet no one feared him either. His presence was quiet, almost protective. Those who glimpsed him whispered stories, saying that even the strongest being could learn compassion and respect from humanity. Children played again in streets that had once been battlefields. Schools reopened, with teachers telling stories not just of survival, but of courage, creativity, and the power of unity. Communities shared resources openly, realizing that no single city, country, or individual could face threats alone. Humanity had become stronger, not because of weapons or machines, but because they had learned to trust and depend on each other. The government systems that had fractured during the invasion were rebuilt differently. This time, cooperation replaced competition. Nations shared technology freely, coordinated defense systems globally, and prioritized survival over politics. Old rivalries faded as humans discovered that their strength lay in unity. Even ordinary citizens became essential leaders, contributing ideas, organizing groups, and making decisions that impacted whole regions. Meanwhile, scientists continued to study the Empire's technology. They found ways to use the ship's energy systems to power cities. Satellites that had once tracked humans became tools for global communication. Materials harvested from destroyed ships created new vehicles, bridges, and infrastructure. Humanity was turning the remnants of war into tools for growth, proving that resilience and ingenuity could convert destruction into opportunity. The Titan's role remained mysterious. Sometimes he was seen guiding humans subtly, moving large debris to prevent harm or standing between dangerous zones and rebuilding civilians. Other times he simply disappeared, watching from a distance. It was clear that he had learned from humanity and perhaps in a strange way respected it. His presence reminded people that even the greatest threats could change when faced with courage, unity, and purpose. Memories of the battles did not fade quickly. Survivors recounted the terror, the despair, and the moments when hope seemed impossible. But these stories were no longer tales of fear. They became lessons in perseverance. Children listened wide-eyed as adults told them how humanity had stood together, how engineers, pilots, soldiers, and ordinary citizens had all contributed to the victory. Every act, no matter how small, had mattered. The humans also learned to laugh again. Not the nervous laughter of fear, but laughter of relief, pride, and joy. Music returned to the cities. Artists painted the skies with color, murals commemorating bravery and cooperation. Communities celebrated life, knowing that every day of peace was earned through courage and determination. Global communication networks improved dramatically. Lessons from the war ensured that any threat could be detected early. Humans built early warning systems, planetary shields, and rapid response teams. Echo helped coordinate this, guiding humans to predict threats and respond before chaos could spread. Humanity's defense was no longer just reactive, it had become proactive. The Titan's impact continued quietly. Even though he never officially joined humanity, people felt safer knowing he watched over them. Scientists speculated that he had changed fundamentally, not because of orders or strategy, but because he had seen humans act in ways no conqueror could anticipate. They had defended their world not through power alone, but through ingenuity, unity, and heart. In every rebuilt city, monuments were erected, not for war or victory, but for human spirit. Statues of ordinary citizens working together, children helping the wounded, and engineers guiding machines served as reminders that every person mattered. Stories of courage and resilience were immortalized, ensuring that future generations would know how their ancestors faced the impossible and survived. Even as the planet healed, humans didn't forget the lessons of fear. They trained continuously, taught their children to be observant, and shared knowledge globally. The memory of the Empire's arrival reminded them that vigilance was essential, and preparation was key. Humanity had survived not by chance but by learning quickly, adapting, and refusing to surrender. Trade and collaboration flourished in the post-war world. Cities that had once been isolated now exchanged technology, food, and ideas freely. Borders became less about control and more about cooperation. People realized that the strength of one city, one nation, or one leader was nothing compared to the strength of billions working together. As years passed, new generations grew up in a world shaped by survival and resilience. Children played with machines inspired by Echo. Students studied the principles of strategy, unity, and innovation that had saved their species. Humans no longer feared the skies. They respected them, aware that other worlds existed but confident that Earth had been prepared for what might come next. The Titan never fully revealed his intentions. Some believed he had returned to the Empire, sharing knowledge of Earth's resilience. Others thought he simply roamed the planet, observing, learning, and perhaps guarding in his silent way. What mattered most was that humanity had turned an enemy into a catalyst for growth, proving that even the most destructive forces could inspire change when met with courage and intelligence. Communities celebrated anniversaries of survival, marking the days when the Empire first appeared and when humanity had first fought back. Stories were told, songs were sung, and knowledge was passed down. The lessons of fear, hope, unity, and ingenuity became part of everyday life. Even nature slowly recovered. Forests grew back over scorched land, oceans cleared of debris. Animals returned to areas that had been devastated. Humanity learned to respect the planet in new ways, understanding that the Earth itself had been a participant in their survival. They had protected it, adapted with it, and learned from it. Humanity had changed forever. The people who once trembled at the arrival of an unknown enemy had now become wise, resourceful, and united. They had turned fear into action, despair into determination, and weakness into strength. Every individual had a story, every community a legacy, and every city a symbol of resilience. The Empire would never forget Earth. They had sent their strongest warrior, and the humans had not only survived but had adapted, learned, and outsmarted them. Humanity had proven that even against overwhelming power, the smallest spark, when nurtured with unity and courage, could become a flame that could light the universe. And as the sun rose over rebuilt cities, green forests, and clear oceans, humans looked to the horizon with hope and pride. They had faced annihilation, stared into the face of fear, and had not only survived but thrived. The Titan, a silent witness, had seen what no conqueror had expected: a species that refused to bow, refused to surrender, and refused to give up. Humans had laughed in the face of the impossible, and in doing so, they had changed their world and perhaps even themselves and forever. The story of Earth was far from over, but humanity now knew something crucial. Together, with courage, creativity, and heart, they could face anything. They had turned their darkest hours into light, and that light would guide every generation to come. The Empire had sent their strongest, thinking they would conquer. But humans had done something stronger. They had united, survived, and grown into a force that could never be underestimated. And in that truth, Earth became more than a planet. It became a symbol of resilience, hope, and the unbreakable human spirit.